They banned me from her family-only engagement party. So I quietly pulled one string, and their whole empire unraveled overnight publicly. They didn't just forget to invite me. They printed my exclusion like a badge of honor. Family only. 6 years married, and I was still Avery's husband, still a guest in the house that claimed my wife as property. My wife went anyway, because her mother expected it, while I stood in our kitchen holding an embossed invitation that told me exactly where I ranked. So I did what I do for a living. I restored the truth. Quietly. Precisely. No screaming. No spilled wine. No public meltdown. Just a few phone calls to the right people, and the Whitmore's perfect world began to crack, starting with the one thing they loved more than money, their reputation. And before anyone says I overreacted, let me take you back to the moment it started. Not the club, not the article, not the fallout. The kitchen, late afternoon light, a marble counter. My wife's jaw clenched so tight I could hear her teeth. Because that's where the Whitmores always begin. No shouting, no slurs, just one polite sentence that leaves you bleeding quietly. And the sentence this time was, "It's family only." They didn't tell me I wasn't invited. Not at first. They did it the way people like the Whitmores do everything, quietly, elegantly, like the blade is part of the table setting. A sentence that sounds like nothing, said with such perfect manners that if you flinch, you look rude. We were in our kitchen when it happened. Late afternoon light leaned through the windows and turned the marble countertop into something holy. Avery was at the island, scrolling on her phone with the tense focus she got when she was reading something she didn't want to read. I was cleaning my brushes, sable hair, soft as whispers. I'd spent the day at the museum removing a century of soot from a portrait's varnish, coaxing a face back into existence with solvents and patience. It's strange work, conservation. You spend your life undoing what time and arrogance have done. You learn what damage looks like when it's pretending to be normal. "Avery," I asked, "you're doing that thing with your jaw." She blinked like she'd forgotten I was in the room. You're clenching." I set the brush down, watched her carefully. "What's up?" Her thumb stopped moving. She swallowed, looked toward the sink, not at me. That's another Whitmore habit. Never look at the person you're hurting while you hurt them. "It's about Graham," she said. "Her brother. The one who called me buddy in a voice that meant temporary. The one who'd hug me at our wedding but kept his hands high, like I was damp paint." "What about him?" I asked. She inhaled and released it slowly, a controlled leak of air. "He and Naya set a date for a small engagement celebration." I smiled automatically because I'm good at polite. "That's great. When?" Avery's eyes flicked to mine and away again. "This Saturday." "This Saturday," I repeated. "Okay, that's soon." "Where?" "At Mother's," she said. Then, softer, "At the house." The house. Not a house, the house. The Whitmore estate, like a museum, but with live people trapped inside the frames. "And," I prompted gently, because in my bones I already knew there was an "and." Avery shifted her phone on the counter as if it weighed too much. "It's intimate." "What does that mean?" She pushed her hair behind one ear. She did it twice, the same motion repeated like a prayer. "Just immediate family." The word landed with a soft thud, not loud, but final. Immediate family. Not me. I waited for her to correct herself. For her to say, "And you obviously." For her to laugh and call her mother ridiculous. For her to do anything that suggested she was on my side. Instead, she said, "Mother thinks it should be simple." "Simple," I echoed, feeling something in my chest tighten. "Who's invited?" Avery's voice went careful. "Graham, Naya, they're close friends. Mother and Dad. And me." "And me?" I asked quietly. Avery's hands curled around the phone like she was holding onto a ledge. "Mateo," there it was. My name set like a warning. I could have done 100 things. I could have laughed, made a joke, called it what it was, cruelty dressed as tradition. I could have demanded she stay home. I could have asked her why she wasn't already furious. Instead, I picked up a towel, dried my hands slowly, and said, "Did she say that? Then I'm not invited." Avery hesitated, just long enough to be an answer. "She said it's family only," Avery murmured. "And I'm not family," I said. "That's not what she meant," Avery said, too quickly. "She meant," She meant the Whitmores, you know how she is. I stared at her. I'm your husband. Avery's cheeks colored, not with anger, but with shame. I know. Then what is this? I asked. An engagement party I'm not allowed to attend because… What? My last name isn't Whitmore? My parents didn't give money to the art wing. Avery's lips parted, closed again. She looked like she wanted to say something brave. She looked like she'd been trained not to. It's just one evening, she said finally, and the sentence hurt more than the exclusion itself. One evening, as if humiliation is measured in hours. My stomach went cold in that particular way, like I'd swallowed ice water and it had frozen into a shape. I leaned on the island across from her. Are you going? Her eyes snapped up. Fear flickered there. Not fear of me, fear of making a choice. Mateo, she began. It's a yes or no question, I said softly. Avery's shoulders rose and fell. Mother expects me. There it was. Not I want to. Not this is wrong. Not I won't go without you. Just, mother expects. And somehow that expectation had more weight than my dignity. I nodded once. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that happens right before something breaks. Okay, I said. Avery's eyes widened. Okay. Yes, I said, and my voice sounded like my own but distant. If you're going, you're going. She reached across the counter, fingertips brushing my hand. Please don't be mad. I looked down at her hand. Pale, perfect nails, a wedding ring that looked like it belonged in a display case, and I thought about all the times I'd stood in front of damaged paintings, deciding whether to clean them or leave the history in place. Some stains you can remove. Some stains are the point. I'm not mad, I said. That was a lie. But I wasn't going to give Evelyn Whitmore the satisfaction of a dramatic reaction. Not when she'd set the trap so carefully. Avery exhaled, relief loosening her mouth. Thank you. I lifted my hand away gently, like you do when you're handling something fragile. I'm going back to the studio, I said. You're working tonight? She asked, already sounding guilty. I said. There's a painting I need to address. Because that's what this was too. Damage. And I'd spent my whole life learning how to deal with damage without making a mess. The Whitmores believed in paper. Not because they were old-fashioned in a charming way. Because paper is a weapon when you know how to use it. Engraved invitations, embossed letterhead, donation receipts, handwritten thank you notes that mean you owe us. When Avery got home from her morning Pilates class, an envelope sat on our foyer table like a dead moth. Thick cream stock, raised lettering, the Whitmore crest, an abstract W that looked like a crown. Avery stared at it as if it might bite. It came by courier, she said. Of course it did, I replied. She didn't pick it up. Her fingers hovered above it, reluctant. I walked over, lifted the envelope, felt the weight. Is it addressed to you? Avery nodded. Yes, only to her. I turned it over. The seal was perfect, unbroken. Evelyn didn't use sticky strips. She used wax, like she was still running an empire out of a castle. Avery's voice was small. Don't open it. Why not? I asked, though I already knew. Because she swallowed. Because it's going to be insulting. I looked at her. Avery. She squeezed her eyes shut for a moment. Just let me open it. She took the envelope, hands trembling slightly, and slid a letter opener beneath the flap. Clean cut. No tearing. Avery had been raised to keep things pristine even when they hurt. Inside was a card. Heavy stock again. The same crest. 2 lines of text. Evelyn and Cal Whitmore request the pleasure of your company to celebrate the engagement of Graham Whitmore and Nia Beaumont Saturday. 7 p.m. Whitmore residence. Family only. As if they had to underline it. Avery made a sound. Half laugh, half choke. She actually put it on the card. I read it again, slower, feeling each word scrape. She didn't have to, I said quietly. I know. She wanted to. I corrected. Avery's eyes filled fast, like she'd been holding back water for years, and the dam had cracked. I try, Mateo. I asked her. I told her it would hurt you. And what did she say? I asked, though I could already hear Evelyn's voice in my head. Silky, certain, merciless. Avery wiped at her cheek, angry at herself for crying. She said it's not personal. I barked a humorless laugh. It's always personal. That's the point. She said it's about tradition. I set the card down carefully, as if it were contaminated. Tradition is just cruelty with better branding. Avery flinched. Please don't what? I asked, and something sharp crept into my voice despite my effort. Don't call it what it is. Don't make you uncomfortable. Avery's face tightened. Don't make me choose. The words hung between us like smoke. I stared at her. You already chose. Her breath caught. That's not fair, isn't it? I asked. Your mother excludes me. You go anyway. You come home and ask me not to be mad. You want me to swallow it so you don't have to feel like a bad person. Avery's shoulders shook. I'm not asking you to swallow it. I'm asking you to understand. Understand what? I demanded. Then I softened because the truth was I did understand. Too well. That your mother will punish you if you don't obey. Avery's eyes snapped up. You don't know what she's like when she's angry. I know exactly what she's like, I said. I've been the target for 6 years. Avery pressed her palms to her eyes. I'm trying. I know, I said, and my voice went quieter. But trying isn't the same as doing. We stood there, the car between us like a verdict. Finally, Avery whispered. She wants me there early. To help. Of course she did. She wanted Avery useful, loyal, displayed. And you're going, I said. Avery didn't answer. That silence was a yes. I nodded. Okay. Avery's head jerked up. That's it? That's all you're going to say? What do you want me to say? I asked, and my calm felt like a storm wall. Beg? Fight? Make you feel less guilty? I want you to tell me what to do, she confessed, voice cracking. I stared at her, this woman I loved, brilliant and kind and trapped inside her mother's cage, and my anger shifted direction. Not at her, at the hands that built the cage. I'm not your mother, I said. I'm not going to control you. Avery's tears slid down again. Then I don't know how to be brave. I stepped closer. Then learn. Avery's mouth trembled. Ow! I looked at the card one more time. Family only. I exhaled slowly. You're going to go? I said. Because you're not ready not to. And I'm not going to make you. But I'm also not going to pretend this is fine. Avery swallowed. So what will you do? I picked up my keys from the hook, feeling the familiar weight. What I do for a living, I said. I'm going to remove what's rotten without cracking the surface. Avery stared at me, confused. I leaned in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, let her have her party. Then I left the house, and I started making calls. 6 years is a long time to be politely rejected. Most people imagine cruelty as shouting, slamming doors, open insults. The Whitmores were too refined for that. Their cruelty was omission, implication, a smile that meant you should know your place. The first time I met Evelyn Whitmore, she stared at my hands. Not my face, not my eyes, my hands. You have working hands, she said, voice smooth as cream. I've been proud of my hands. They were steady, precise. They had repaired a torn canvas with stitches so small you couldn't see them. They had removed grime from gilded frames without stripping the gold leaf. Yes, I'd said carefully. They're useful in my field. Evelyn's smile sharpened. How practical. Practical, in her mouth, was a slur. At our wedding, Evelyn wore black. Not because she was grieving, because she was making a point. When Avery introduced me to her father's golf friends, Cal said, Mateo's in the arts. Very niche. When I offered to help carry dishes after holiday dinners, Evelyn said, No, guests don't go into the kitchen. Guest. After I married her daughter. Every year, there were events I attended, but was never included in. Avery would be asked to sit for family photos, and someone would casually say, Oh, just the Whitmores for this one. Then they'd take a second photo that included me, as if I were an accessory they could add later. Once at a charity gala, Evelyn introduced Avery as my daughter, then turned to me and said, And this is Avery's husband, Mateo. Not my son-in-law, not family. Avery would squeeze my hand under tables, whisper apologies in bathrooms, promise she'd talk to her mother later. Later never came, because later always cost Avery something. Avery had grown up in a world where her mother's approval was oxygen, where being cut off meant not just losing money, though there was that too, but losing identity. The Whitmore name was currency. Their friends were investments. Their charity work was publicity. Their traditions were contracts. And in that world, love was an inconvenience. I tolerated it longer than I want to admit. Because I loved Avery. Because I thought patience was strength. Because I thought, foolishly, that being consistently good would eventually earn me a place. But exclusion isn't something you outwork. It's something people choose to maintain. This engagement party was just the most explicit version yet. Family only, printed like a law. When I arrived at my studio, the museum had gone quiet for the evening. The security guard nodded at me with friendly recognition. He knew my name. He knew my work. He saw me as part of the building. The Whitmores never had. I turned on the lamp above my workstation. A half-restored painting waited on my table, an old portrait with a crack running like lightning through the subject's cheek. I sat down, stared at the crack, and thought, this is what happens when pressure builds beneath the surface. Then I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. There are two kinds of connections in the art world. The flashy kind, people who attend galas and pose with donors. And the quiet kind, people who actually run institutions, who decide what gets shown, who decide what gets funded, who decide which names get spoken with respect. Evelyn Whitmore believed she owned the art world because her name was engraved on a wing. She didn't understand that you can't buy integrity. Not when the people who guard it finally get tired of being used. I scrolled until I found the name I needed. Dr. Farah Al-Sayed, museum director. The woman who had hired me because she cared about skill, not pedigree. The woman who once told me, over coffee, donors can purchase walls. They can't purchase my standards. I stared at her contact for a moment. Then I pressed call. Saturday arrived like a bruise. Avery moved through our house in quiet preparation, dressed in pale blue, a color her mother liked because it made Avery look soft. I watched her from the doorway of our bedroom as she fastened earrings. Her hand shook slightly. Do you want me to change? She asked without looking at me. Why? I asked. Because you're staring like you hate it, she whispered. I exhaled. I don't hate your dress. Avery's eyes flicked to the mirror. You hate that I'm going. I didn't answer fast enough. Avery's mouth tightened. Say it. I hate that you're going, I said calmly. Yes. Avery swallowed hard. I don't know how to fix this. You can start by not pretending it's mine to fix, I replied. Avery flinched as if I'd slapped her. I'm not pretending that. Avery, I said gently, you keep looking at me like I'm going to rescue you from your mother. But the only person who can walk out of that house is you. Her eyes watered instantly. Why do you make it sound so easy? It isn't easy, I said. That's why it matters. Avery grabbed her clutch from the dresser. I'm going for 2 hours. I'll leave early. 2 hours. As if humiliation has a minimum requirement. She paused at the doorway. Are you coming with me? Just to the driveway? I'll walk you out, I said. We went downstairs together in silence. Outside, the air was cold and clean. Avery's car sat in the driveway like a getaway vehicle. At the driver's side door, Avery turned to me, eyes shining. I love you. I believed her. That was the tragedy. I love you too, I said. She looked like she wanted to say more. Like she wanted to apologize again, bargain again, promise again. Instead, she whispered, please don't do anything. I stared at her. Anything like what? You know, she said, voice panicked. Please don't blow it up. There it was. Not please don't get hurt. Not please don't suffer. Not please forgive me. Please don't blow up the Whitmore's world. My voice went very soft. Avery, I'm not the one who lit the match. Her eyes widened, fear sharpening into something else, recognition. Then she nodded once, like someone accepting a verdict, and climbed into the car. I stood in the driveway and watched her back out. Watched her leave me behind. Watched her choose family only over me again. I didn't follow. I didn't call. I didn't text. I went back inside, sat at the kitchen island, and opened my laptop. Because while Avery walked into her mother's house, I was going to walk into Evelyn's world. And I was going to remove the rut so cleanly that no one could accuse me of vandalism. There's a myth about revenge, that it's loud. That it looks like shouting, public humiliation, spilled wine, shattered glass. That's not my style. I restore things. I work with cotton swabs and tiny scalpels, with solvents measured in drops, with patience, with restraint, because one wrong move can strip away color that can never be replaced. That night, I built my revenge the way I'd clean a painting. Test first. Start small. Watch the reaction. Then proceed. I opened a document and wrote a single line at the top, like a thesis. The Whitmores exclude people publicly while selling themselves as patrons of community and inclusion. Because that's what this was. Not just a personal insult, a moral contradiction. Evelyn sat on charity boards that claimed to support community access and equity in arts. Her name was on donor walls beside slogans like "Art belongs to everyone." But in her private home, she treated my presence like contamination. Hypocrisy is a fragile thing. It shatters when exposed to light. I didn't need lies. I didn't need exaggeration. I needed the truth, framed correctly. So I drafted an email, short, careful, professional, to Dr. Farah Al-Sayed. I didn't write, "My mother-in-law is cruel." I wrote, "A donor family connected to our institution is hosting a family-only engagement event explicitly excluding a spouse of 6 years. I'm concerned about the optics and integrity, given their public positioning as advocates for inclusion." Optics, integrity, words that matter to directors. I hit send. Then I drafted another email to Jonah Park, editor of Gilded, a magazine that covered society, philanthropy, and culture. Jonah loved a story that looked like sophistication but smelled like blood. I wrote, "You may want to keep an eye on the Whitmore family. Their private conduct is beginning to conflict with their public brand, particularly around inclusion messaging. Beginning to conflict. Beginning. As if it was already in motion. As if the tide was already turning." Then I looked up the Whitmore Country Club's board contacts and found a name I'd been waiting for. Rohan Desai, owner. Not a Whitmore friend, too new money for that, but a businessman who valued reputation as currency. I didn't email him. I called, because some things land harder when a human voice delivers them. While the phone rang, I imagined Avery at the Whitmore house, her mother arranging flowers, her father pouring expensive whiskey, Graham smiling as if he hadn't just agreed to exclude me. I imagined the phrase "family only" repeated like a hymn. Rohan picked up on the third ring. "Desai, Mr. Desai," I said evenly, "this is Mateo Rivera. I'm an art conservator at the Albright Museum." A pause. "Yes, I know who you are." Of course he did. My work had been featured in a fundraiser there last year. The Whitmores had taken credit for hosting it. "I'm calling because I've become aware of an incident involving members of your club," I said. Rohan's voice cooled. "Go on." I chose my words with surgical precision. "A spouse of 6 years has been publicly excluded from a family-only engagement event hosted by the member family. The language used was explicit. The intent was exclusionary." Silence then. "That's at the domestic issue." "It would be," I agreed, "if the family weren't using the club's brand as part of their social capital, while behaving in ways that signal the opposite of civility." Rohan exhaled slowly. I could hear calculation. "Which members?" I named them. Evelyn, Cal, and by association their close circle. Rohan's voice turned crisp. "Do you have this in writing?" I smiled faintly. "They printed family only on the invitation." Another pause. Then forwarded to my office. "I will," I said. After we hung up, my hands were steady. I didn't feel joy. I felt clean, like when a layer of grime finally lifts and you see the original paint beneath, bright, undeniable. Outside, night pressed against the windows. Somewhere across town, Avery sat at her mother's table, and I began the process of making sure the Whitmore's world would never look the same. Dr. Farah Al-Sayed called me at 9:12 p.m. I knew it was her before I even looked because she never called late unless something mattered. I answered on the second ring. "Farah, Mateo," she said, voice firm and low. "I read your email." I sat back in my chair, heart steady. "Thank you for looking. I want to be clear," she said. "I don't involve the museum in private family disputes." "I understand," I replied. "That wasn't my intention." "Good," Farah said, "because if this is simply a mother-in-law being unpleasant, it's regrettable, but not my jurisdiction." I didn't flinch. Agreed. A pause. "But," Farah continued, "your phrasing wasn't about feelings. It was about integrity." "Yes," I said softly, "because it is." Farah was quiet for a moment. I pictured her in her office, books stacked, lights dim, the city reflected in the window. She was the kind of woman who could dismantle someone with a single sentence and never raise her voice. What exactly happened? She asked. So I told her. Not with drama. With facts. 6 years married. Repeated exclusion. The printed invitation with family only. Avery attending anyway. The Whitmore's public branding around access and inclusion. When I finished, Farah's voice was colder than before. They printed it. They printed it. I confirmed. Arrogant, she murmured. I didn't gloat. I waited. Farah sighed. Mateo, I'm going to give you advice as your director, not your friend. Okay, I said. People like Evelyn Whitmore survive because everyone assumes their behavior is normal in private, Farah said. It isn't. And the moment respected institutions stop treating it like a harmless quirk, it becomes what it truly is, a stain. My throat tightened slightly. That's how it feels. I'm not going to launch a crusade, Farah continued, but I'm going to protect this museum's credibility. If donors are publicly positioning themselves as advocates for inclusion while privately practicing exclusion, it undermines our mission. I exhaled slowly. What will you do? Farah's voice sharpened. First, I'm pulling Evelyn's name from the guest list for the upcoming Access Initiative Gala. Quietly. No announcement. Just an absence. My pulse skipped. Evelyn prized appearances. Being absent would be noticed. And second, Farah said, I'm scheduling a meeting with the development office. I want to review the Whitmore family's messaging and involvement. If they're going to attach their name to our programs, they will align with our values. I swallowed. Farah, do not thank me, she snapped gently. This should have been done long ago. I tolerated them because donors are complicated. But your email reminded me that our mission is not for sale. My eyes burned unexpectedly. Not because I was sad, because someone in power was finally naming the truth. Farah's voice softened. Mateo, are you safe at home? I blinked. Safe. She paused. Emotional safety is still safety. I breathed out a laugh that wasn't funny. I'm intact. Good, Farah said. Then do not make rash moves. Let institutions do what institutions do. Let people see the contradiction. You've given them the match. Don't be the one standing closest to the fire. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Understood. Farah hesitated, then added, and Mateo? Yes. You are family, she said simply. The rest is theater. The call ended, and I sat in the silence, staring at my desk. Outside, the city kept breathing. Cars passed. Lights shifted. Somewhere, Evelyn Whitmore was smiling at her own party, believing herself untouchable. She had no idea that the walls she'd paid for could not protect her from what she'd revealed. Because the worst thing you can do to people like Evelyn Whitmore isn't to insult them. It's to let the right people see them clearly. Jonah Park didn't respond to emails the way normal people did. Normal people replied with words. Jonah replied with movement. At 10:04 a.m. Sunday morning, my phone buzzed with a single text. Coffee? 30 minutes. Bring the card. No greeting. No name. Just an assumption that I'd comply. I almost laughed. The Whitmores lived on assumption too. Jonah was just honest about it. I met him at a small cafe downtown that pretended not to exist. No sign outside. No menu on the wall. The kind of place where wealthy people could feel anonymous while still being recognized. Jonah sat in the back, legs crossed, coat draped over the chair like it had a personal assistant. He looked up as I approached, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp. Mateo Rivera, he said, as if we were meeting for the first time, even though we'd spoken at enough museum events to know each other's tells. Jonah, I replied. He didn't offer a handshake. He offered his attention, which in his world was worth more. You wrote me like a man who's trying not to look angry, Jonas said, sipping his espresso. That usually means you're furious. I'm not furious, I said. I'm precise. Jonah's mouth twitched. That's a better kind of furious. I slid the engagement card across the table. He didn't touch it at first. He leaned forward to read the raised lettering, the crest, the clean brutality of the last line. Family only. Wow. Jonah breathed, like a man admiring a weapon. They actually printed it. Yes, I said. And your wife is going? Jonah asked, eyes flicking up. I held his gaze. Yes. Jonah nodded slowly, like he'd just confirmed the angle. Hum. That's the part that turns this from mean mother-in-law to public brand fracture. He finally picked up the card, turned it over, tapped the crest with a fingernail. You know what I do for a living, Mateo? Jonah asked. You curate stories, I said. No, Jonah corrected. I curate permission. I tell society who is allowed to be admired. He set the card down gently, like it was a piece of evidence in a trial. The Whitmores are admired because they've spent 2 decades buying admiration, he said. Donations, boards, fancy words, photos with children at charity events. He leaned in, and then they do something like this, he murmured, which tells me they think they're immune. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I let Jonah speak himself in emotion. What do you want? He asked. I kept my voice neutral. I want integrity to matter. I want institutions to stop treating cruelty as a quirk. And I want my marriage to stop being collateral for my mother-in-law's ego. Jonah's eyes softened for half a second, then sharpened again. Okay, he said. Here's how this works. I don't run hit pieces. I don't publish revenge. I publish patterns. Hypocrisy. Contradictions. He lifted his cup. If I write about them, it won't be Evelyn Whitmore is awful. It will be old money families are struggling to reconcile their inclusive branding with exclusive behavior. And the Whitmores would be an example, I said. Jonah smiled. An illustrative case study. He pulled out his phone, typed a note, then looked up. I'm going to ask around, Jonah said. If this is a one-off, it's a rumor. If this is a pattern, it's a story. And Mateo, yes. If you're doing this, Jonah said, do it clean. No dramatics. No public screaming. The minute you look emotional, they'll paint you as unstable and them as dignified. I thought of Evelyn's smile. I won't scream, I said. Jonah's grin widened. Good. Then let's watch what happens when they can't control the narrative. As I stood to leave, Jonah added, almost casually, also, your wife's going to have to choose at some point. I paused. I know. Jonah's gaze was cool. Make sure she chooses before they force her. The Whitmore Country Club sat behind gates, so tall they looked defensive. Old trees lined the drive, their branches arching overhead like a cathedral. The clubhouse itself was pale stone, with green doors polished to a shine, so reflective you could see yourself arriving. I'd been there exactly 3 times. Once for a fundraiser the Whitmores hosted, where my restoration work was presented like a trophy they'd purchased. Once for a holiday brunch, where Evelyn introduced me as Avery's husband, and then drifted away like I'd been a passing waiter. And once a year ago, when Rohan Desai invited me for lunch because he wanted to talk about art acquisitions and image. Rohan was not old money. He was not interested in pretending to be. He was interested in leverage. That afternoon, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. Mateo. Mr. Rivera, a woman's voice said. This is Tara from Mr. Desai's office. He received your forwarded document. The invitation, I said. Yes, Tara said. Mr. Desai would like to speak with you briefly. There was a click, and then Rohan's voice filled my ear, smooth, clipped, impatient in the way of men who don't waste time on softness. Rivera, he said. Mr. Desai, I replied. I read it, he said. The card, the phrase. Family only, I said. Printed, Rohan confirmed, and I could hear disgust under the control. That's not an accident. That's a statement. It is, I said. Rohan exhaled. Here's the issue, Rivera. My club is not a playground for private cruelty. People can be snobs. That's inevitable. But when behavior becomes publicly reputational, when it starts to look like discrimination, exclusion, brand contradiction, then it becomes my problem. I didn't interrupt. My board is already twitchy, Rohan continued. We've been trying to modernize, bring in younger members, corporate partnerships, diverse philanthropic connections, and then an old money family, one of our most visible, Prince family only to exclude a spouse. He paused. That's a headline waiting to happen, he said. Yes, I agreed. Rohan's voice turned sharper. Do you want them removed? The question was blunt. So that's my answer. I want accountability, I said. Whatever that looks like in your system. Rohan was quiet for a beat, then said, accountability looks like consequences, and consequences look like removal. He didn't sound gleeful. He sounded decisive. I'm going to convene an ethics review, he said. It will be framed as conduct unbecoming. The Whitmores will scream about tradition, but traditions don't pay my bills. My throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me, Rohan snapped. This isn't a favor. This is risk management. Then he added, almost like an afterthought, also, Rivera? Yes. Your wife, he said. Is she going to keep going along with this? I stared out my studio window at the gray winter sky. I don't know, I admitted. Then you better prepare, Rohan said, because when the Whitmores fall, they will grab onto her like a railing. The line went dead. I sat for a moment, absorbing the truth in his words. When the floor collapses, people cling to whoever is closest. Avery was about to become their nearest object, and she didn't even know it yet. Avery came home at 9:36 p.m. Saturday night. Not 2 hours. Not early. She came home late enough that the party had wound down and the damage had been done. I was sitting on the couch, lights low, not pretending to sleep. I had my phone face down beside me like a gun I wasn't sure I wanted to use. Avery stepped into the living room and froze when she saw me. Hey, she said softly. I didn't answer right away. Her mascara was perfect. Her hair still pinned. Her posture still trained. But her eyes were different. Tired. Did it go well? I asked calmly. Avery's mouth twitched, like she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They were happy. And you? I asked. Avery blinked. I watched her struggle to find the sentence that would not offend her mother, even though her mother wasn't in the room. Mother asked about you, she finally said. I let the silence stretch. What did she say? I asked. Avery set her clutch down slowly. She said you were busy with your museum things. I said. So she made me small. Avery's eyes flashed. Mateo, please. Please what? I asked. Avery's voice cracked. Please don't make me relive it. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I stood. Avery stiffened, bracing. I walked past her into the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank. My hands didn't shake. I refused to give her that image. Me trembling, me raging, because that would become evidence against me in her head. When I returned, Avery had sunk onto the couch, shoulders hunched. I'm sorry, she whispered. I sat in the armchair across from her. I know. Avery looked up. Her eyes were wet. Why are you so calm? Because I did my screaming years ago, I thought. In silence. Out loud, I said, because I decided something. Avery's brow furrowed. What? I leaned forward slightly. Avery, I'm not asking you to cut your family off. I'm not asking you to burn bridges. But I'm asking you to stop offering me up as a sacrifice so you can keep your mother happy. Avery flinched. I didn't, you did, I said, gently but firmly. Tonight. Avery's lips trembled. I didn't know what else to do. I know, I said, but not knowing doesn't protect you from the consequences. Avery wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, angry at herself. What consequences? I didn't answer immediately, because the first domino had already started to fall. At 10:11 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Farah, FYI, Evelyn's name removed from Access Initiative Gala list. Quietly, development team, meeting Monday. I stared at the message, then set the phone down. Avery watched me, anxious. What is it? I held her gaze. It's the beginning. Her face went pale. Beginning of what? I exhaled. Of people seeing what your mother did. Avery's eyes widened, fear rising. Mateo, what did you do? I didn't lie. I told the truth, I said. To people who care about integrity. Avery shot to her feet. You told Farah? Yes, I said. Avery's hands flew to her hair. Oh my God, Avery, I said calmly. Your mother printed family only to exclude me. That wasn't private. That was a message. And messages get received. Avery's breathing quickened. She's going to kill me. She's going to blame you, I corrected. Because she can't blame herself. Avery stared at me like I just turned into someone she didn't recognize. And maybe I had. Because the man who used to swallow humiliation for love was gone. In his place was someone who knew how to remove a stain, patiently, professionally, until everyone could see the original truth underneath. Monday morning, The first phone call came at 8:02. Avery had barely poured coffee when her phone lit up with Mother in all caps. She stared at it as if it might explode. "You should answer," I said. Avery's eyes darted to me. "You don't understand, I do," I said. "But you should still answer." Avery's hand shook as she swiped. "Hello," she said, voice too sweet. Evelyn's voice blasted through the speaker, even at a low volume. Controlled rage, the kind that doesn't scream because screaming is for people without power. "Avery," Evelyn said. "What did you do?" Avery's spine went rigid. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Evelyn said. "I just received a call from the Albright Museum. Farah Al-Sayed." She was extremely cold. Avery's eyes snapped to mine, panic blooming. Evelyn continued. She implied, that my presence at the Access Initiative Gala is no longer appropriate given recent concerns. Avery's mouth opened, closed. Evelyn's voice sharpened. "Recent concerns, Avery. What concerns?" Avery's voice trembled. "I don't know." Silence, then, "Don't lie to me." Avery's eyes filled. She whispered, "Mother." Evelyn cut her off. "Did your husband call her?" Avery's gaze flicked to me again. "I didn't rescue her. I didn't take the phone. This was her moment to stop being managed." Avery swallowed. "Mateo, he felt hurt." "Hurt," Evelyn repeated, as if the word tasted bad. "Your husband is not a factor in this family." Avery flinched like she'd been struck. Evelyn's voice turned icy. "Fix it. Immediately. Or I will." The call ended. Avery stood in the kitchen, holding the phone like it had burned her. I watched her. "What did she say?" Avery's voice was small. "She said you're not a factor." I nodded slowly. "And what did that do to you?" Avery blinked, as if she hadn't expected the question. It made me feel, say it," I urged softly. Avery's mouth trembled. "It made me feel like I married you, and still somehow I'm living in her house." I felt something soften in my chest. Pain, yes, but also the first hint of clarity. "She wants you to fix it," Avery whispered, eyes wild. "Mateo, she's going to come for us." For me. I stood and walked to her, placing my hands gently on her shoulders. "Avery," I said, "listen to me." She stared up at me, terrified. "She can only come for you if you keep opening the door," I said. Avery's breath hitched. "I don't know how to close it." I looked at her for a long moment. Then my phone buzzed again. A text from Jonah. "Heard Whitmore's getting iced out. Call me. Also, club board meeting tonight." Avery saw my expression change. "What now?" I exhaled slowly. "Now," I said, "your mother learns what happens when the world stops pretending she's untouchable." Avery's eyes widened. "Mateo." I brushed a tear from her cheek with my thumb. "Choose," I whispered. "Me, or the life she built for you." Avery's lips parted, trembling. And for the first time in 6 years, she didn't answer immediately, which meant the cage had finally started to crack. The Whitmores didn't just take things. They took space. They took rooms, took conversations, took other people's comfort as if it was owed. So when Evelyn arrived unannounced at our house that afternoon, driver parked at the curb, coat immaculate, expression serene, she didn't look like a woman in crisis. She looked like she was coming to correct a mistake. I opened the door before she could ring the bell twice. "Evelyn," I said evenly. Her eyes swept over me, assessing. "Mateo." Behind me, Avery hovered at the hallway entrance like a frightened animal. Evelyn stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Where is she?" Evelyn asked, as if Avery was a missing object. "I'm here," Avery said, voice shaky. Evelyn turned, smile thin. "Avery, darling." She crossed the foyer and kissed Avery's cheek. Avery stood stiff, accepting it like an obligation. Evelyn's gaze flicked to me again. "May we speak privately?" I tilted my head. "No." Evelyn's smile didn't falter, but her eyes sharpened. "Excuse me." "No private conversations," I said calmly. "Not anymore." Avery inhaled sharply. Evelyn studied me, then glanced at Avery. "Is this what you've become?" Avery's voice cracked. "Mother, please." Evelyn lifted a hand. "No. Listen." She turned fully to Avery. "I've spent decades cultivating our family standing. Do you understand what you've jeopardized?" Avery swallowed. Don't insult me. Evelyn snapped, the first crack in her composure. You didn't wake up one day and decide the museum director would ice me out. This was deliberate. This was retaliation. Evelyn's eyes slid to me. You, she said quietly. I didn't blink. Me? Evelyn exhaled through her nose. How common. Avery flinched again. Her hands clenched at her sides. Evelyn kept going, voice low and lethal. You think you can blackmail us? You think you can ruin us because you didn't get invited to a party? I stepped closer, posture relaxed. It wasn't a party. It was a message. And yes, messages have consequences. Evelyn's jaw tightened. You're not part of this family. Avery whispered, stop. Evelyn didn't even look at her. Avery, if you don't correct this, you will regret it. We can remove support. We can. Avery's voice rose suddenly raw. Support. Evelyn finally turned, surprised. Avery's eyes were shining with tears and anger. You call it support like you've ever supported me. You supported your image. You supported your name. Evelyn's face went cold. Avery. Avery's voice trembled but didn't break. You excluded my husband. You printed it on paper like you were proud. And now you want me to fix your embarrassment. Silence fell like a curtain. Evelyn's lips parted slightly, the first sign she hadn't expected resistance. I watched Avery, my wife, shaking, finally standing upright in her own house. Evelyn recovered quickly. You're emotional, she said, dismissive. This is why I try to keep things simple. Avery laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Simple. You mean obedient. Evelyn's gaze hardened. If you choose him over us, you will lose everything. Avery's breath caught. She looked at me, panic returning. The fear of the cliff edge. I stepped beside her, not in front of her. I didn't shield her. I stood with her. You already took everything that mattered, Avery whispered to her mother. You just didn't realize it. Evelyn stared at her, furious now, because the one person she'd always controlled had slipped. You're making a mistake, Evelyn hissed. Avery's hands shook, but her voice came out clearer. Maybe, but it's mine. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Fine, she snapped. Then enjoy the consequences. She turned and strode to the door, heels clicking like a countdown. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at me. This ends, she said. I met her gaze, calm as stone. No, I replied. This begins. Evelyn's expression twisted. Then she left. When the door shut, Avery collapsed against the wall, sliding down like her bones had turned to water. I crouched beside her. Breathe. Avery's chest heaved. She's going to destroy me. I took her trembling hands in mine. No, I said softly. She's going to try. And as if to prove it, my phone buzzed again. A notification from Rohan's office. Ethics review concluded. Membership privileges suspended pending formal vote. I stared at the message. Avery looked up at my face, reading my reaction. What is it? I exhaled slowly. It's happening, I said. Avery's eyes widened with terror. And somewhere out there, Evelyn Whitmore, who had spent her life building walls, was about to discover what it feels like when the world stops letting you hide behind them. Tuesday's headlines weren't headlines. Not yet. They were whispers in the places that mattered. Boardrooms, club lounges, museum development meetings, the private group texts that shaped public reality. Jonah called me at noon. Okay, he said without greeting. It's a pattern. My stomach tightened. What did you find? That Evelyn's been pulling this family-only nonsense for years, Jonah said. Not always with spouses, sometimes with staff, sometimes with friends who aren't the right kind of friends. She's got a reputation for being selective. Selective, I echoed. Jonah snorted. Cruel, but yes, selective. He continued, also, Nia Beaumont isn't blind. She's very aware of what she married into. My pulse quickened. What do you mean? Jonah's voice went thoughtful. I have a source who overheard Nia at the party. When Evelyn introduced her to someone as perfectly suitable, Nia smiled and said, suitable is such an interesting word. I pictured it. Nia, poised, hearing the same coded language I'd heard for years. She noticed, I murmured. Oh, she noticed, Jonah confirmed. And she didn't like it. Jonah paused, then said, Matteo, you need to understand something. When old money families face social ruin, They do two things. They look for a scapegoat, and they look for a sacrifice. I felt cold again. Avery. Bingo, Jonas said. They'll demand she fix it because she's the only bridge they think they still own. I clenched my jaw. What are you publishing? Jonah's voice sharpened. Not yet. I'm waiting for the club vote. That's the public domino. Once that drops, the story isn't mean party invitation. Its social institutions reject high-profile family for conduct unbecoming. That's delicious. I swallow my reaction. Be careful. Jonah laughed. Mateo, I'm always careful. I'm not careful for them. I'm careful for the narrative. The call ended. That night, Avery's father called. Not Evelyn. Cal. Avery put on speaker, hands shaking. Avery, Cal said gently, like he was about to ask her to pass the salt. We need to talk. Avery's voice was tight. About what? Cal sighed. About what you and your husband have done. Avery looked at me, eyes pleading. I didn't speak. This was hers. Cal continued. Your mother is devastated. She's being treated unfairly. Avery's laugh was small and bitter. Unfairly. Cal's tone turned firmer. You know how she is. We have a certain way. A certain way, Avery repeated. You mean exclusion? Cal didn't answer that directly. We want to resolve this quietly. Avery's jaw tightened. By making Mateo apologize? Yes, Cal said, and there it was, finally honest. He needs to call Farah. He needs to call whoever he called and correct the impression. He needs to make it clear this was a misunderstanding. Avery's eyes flashed. It wasn't a misunderstanding. Cal's voice cooled. Avery. Avery inhaled sharply. Dad, listen to me. Mother printed family only on the invitation. She excluded my husband of 6 years. Cal's voice went strained. It was just an engagement dinner. It was humiliation. Avery snapped, voice breaking. It was a message. And now you're asking me to tell him to swallow it. Silence on the line. Then Cal said softly, if you don't, things will get complicated. Avery's face went pale. Is that a threat? Cal sighed again. It's a warning. The firm, the board, Graham's partners, people are nervous. Avery's lips trembled. So you're choosing the firm over me. Cal's voice was quiet. We're choosing survival. The word hit like a slap. Survival. As if my dignity was a luxury. Avery's eyes flooded. She whispered, okay. My heart clenched. I feared she was surrendering. Then Avery continued, voice suddenly firm. Then survive without me. Cal went silent. Avery's hands shook, but she held the phone steady. If you wanted to fix this, the answer is no. If you want to talk to me like your daughter, not a tool, you can. But I'm not sacrificing my husband to keep mother comfortable. Cal's voice turned sharp for the first time. Avery, don't be dramatic. Avery's laugh was wet. That's the thing, Dad. I've never been dramatic. I've been obedient. Then she hung up. She stared at the dark screen, chest heaving. I walked to her slowly. Avery. She looked up at me with terror and relief tangled together. I did it, she whispered. Yes, I said softly. You did. Avery's breath came out as a sob. What happens now? I didn't sugarcoat it. Now, I said, they escalate. And even as I spoke, my phone buzzed with a new message. From Rohan. Vote scheduled. Thursday, 6 p.m. Expect press leaks. I stared at the screen. Avery watched my face. What is it? I lifted my eyes to hers. Thursday, I said. Avery swallowed. What happens Thursday? I exhaled. Thursday, I said. The Whitmores lose the one thing they love more than money. Avery's voice was a whisper. What? I leaned in, close enough that she could feel the certainty in my breath. Respectability, I said. And in that moment, Avery, who had been raised to worship that word, looked like someone finally realizing it was a cage. By Wednesday morning, the Whitmores had stopped pretending this was about feelings. They'd moved to what they knew best, leverage. Avery's work email, an account she still technically had access to because she'd never formally stepped away from the family firm, pinged with a calendar invite. Mandatory meeting, 3 p.m. Subject, PR and reputational risk. Attendees, Cal Whitmore, Gregory Whitmore, CFO, Legal Counsel, Avery Whitmore Rivera. Avery stared at her laptop like it had grown teeth. They're bringing legal, she whispered. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, coffee untouched. They want you scared. I am scared, Avery admitted, voice thin. I leaned forward. Then go scared. But go honest. Avery's hands twisted together. What if they fire me? You don't work there, I said gently. Avery blinked. You still feel like you do, I finished. That's the trap. Avery swallowed. If I walk in there, it's going to be Mother's voice in every room. Then walk in with yours, I said. She let out a shaky laugh. I don't know if I have one. You do, I said quietly. You used it yesterday. Avery stared down at her hands. What if they make me choose? Like officially. I didn't flinch. I didn't soften the truth. They will, I said. Avery's eyes lifted wet. And if I choose you, I lose them. I held her gaze. And if you choose them, you lose yourself. Avery's breath hitched. She stood abruptly, chair scraping. I have to go. Do you want me to come? I asked. She hesitated, then shook her head. No. If you come, they'll make you the problem. I need to do this. It was the first time she'd said something like that without begging me to fix it. I nodded. Okay. At the door, Avery turned back, eyes shining. Mateo. Yes. If I break, she whispered. If I cave, you won't, I said. She swallowed. How do you know? I stepped closer, cupped her cheek gently. Because you're tired. And tired women stop lying. Avery's eyes closed briefly, like she was storing the sentence away. Then she left, and the house went quiet in the way it does when something is about to either end or begin. At 2:58 p.m., Avery texted me from her car, going in, hands shaking. I love you. I replied, love you. Say the truth once, then repeat it. At 3:47 p.m., I got another text. They said I have one job. Make you apologize or I'm no longer protected. My jaw tightened. Protected. As if her family were a fortress and my love a liability. At 4:12 p.m., Avery called. I answered immediately. Avery, her breathing was ragged, like she'd been running. They said if you don't retract whatever you said, they'll push for divorce. Silence filled my chest like cold water. Who said that? I asked carefully. Mother, Avery whispered. She wasn't even in the meeting. She called in, like a queen. I closed my eyes. What did you say? Avery's voice broke. I said no. My eyes snapped open. You said no. I said no, she repeated, almost surprised by herself. And then Dad said. He said I'm choosing scandal over family. I exhaled slowly. And what did you say? Avery's voice steadied, shaky but real. I said, I'm choosing my husband. My throat tightened. Avery, she made a sound that was half sob, half laugh. They told me to leave the building, like I was contagious. I stood so fast my chair tipped back. Where are you? In the parking garage, she whispered. I don't want to drive. I feel sick. Stay there, I said. I'm coming. When I got to the garage, Avery was sitting in her car with her forehead pressed to the steering wheel. I opened the passenger door and slid in. She looked up at me with eyes red and stunned. I did it, she whispered again, like she couldn't believe the words. I reached across and took her hand. You did. Avery's fingers tightened around mine like a lifeline. And now they're going to destroy us. I kissed her knuckles. No, I said. Now, they're going to try to scare you into crawling back. Avery's lips trembled. What if I'm not strong enough? I squeezed her hand. Then I'll be strong with you. Outside, the garage lights hummed. And somewhere in the Whitmore world, the first real panic had taken root because Avery Whitmore had finally refused to behave. That night, Avery didn't eat. She sat on our bedroom floor with her back against the bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. I knelt beside her and offered soup. She shook her head. Avery, I murmured. Drink water. She blinked slowly, like she'd forgotten how bodies work. If I drink water, it makes it real. It's already real, I said softly. Avery's mouth tightened. They looked at me like I'd betrayed the country. I leaned my shoulder against the bed frame, staying close but not crowding her. They've trained you to believe their approval is the same as survival. Avery let out a ragged laugh. It kind of is. Everything I am is tied to them. No, I said gently. Everything they told you to be. Avery's eyes filled again. I can't believe I let her do this for so long. I swallowed the ache in my chest. You were raised in it. Avery shook her head violently. But I saw it. I saw it when she called you Avery's husband and never family. I saw it when she cut you out of photos. I saw it when she made you wait outside while they had family conversations. Her voice rose, cracking. I saw it when she made me choose her every holiday. Avery slapped her own thigh in frustration. And I still kept hoping if I was perfect, she'd stop. I reached for her hand. Avery, she yanked it away, not from me, from the feeling. Don't soothe me. I deserve to feel this. I stayed quiet, because she was right. Pain can be a teacher if you don't numb it. Avery's breath shuddered. She said I'm no longer protected. I kept my voice even. Protected from what? Avery's eyes darted, haunted, from being alone. I felt the full weight of Evelyn's training in that one word. Alone. Not the loneliness of lacking love, but the loneliness of losing the audience. I shifted closer. Avery, look at me. She didn't. I touched her chin lightly, coaxing her gaze up. You are not alone, I said. Avery's eyes searched mine. But what if you leave? The question punched air out of me. Not because I wanted to, but because she'd been conditioned to believe love is temporary. I'm here, I said firm. But you have to meet me here. Avery's lips trembled. I don't know how. I took a slow breath. Start with this. Tomorrow, you're going to stop using their language. Avery frowned. Their language? Yes, I said. Protected. Standing. Tradition. Family only. Those words are tools. They keep you small. Replace them with truth. Avery whispered. Truth like? I looked her in the eye. Like, my mother excluded my husband. I refused. I'm allowed to. Avery's throat bobbed. I'm allowed to. Yes, I said. Avery's face crumpled, and she finally cried. Not quietly, not neatly, but with the ugly relief of someone who has been holding in breath for years. I wrapped my arms around her and held her. And while Avery broke in my arms, somewhere else the Whitmores were preparing their counterattack. Because people like Evelyn don't tolerate disobedience. They punish it. Thursday arrived with bright cold air, the kind of sky that looks innocent while it watches you bleed. The club vote was scheduled for 6 p.m. By noon, there were already rumors. Avery's phone buzzed with missed calls, friends, cousins, a number labeled NAY that she didn't answer because her hand was still shaking. I watched Avery pace the living room, bare feet silent on the rug. They're texting like I'm sick, she said, voice bitter. Like I've caught some disease. They're afraid the stain will spread. I replied. Avery stopped. What if you went too far? I didn't snap. I didn't say you should have thought of that earlier. I knew guilt was her instinct. If something explodes, she blames herself for the sound. Instead, I stood and walked to the bookshelf. I pulled out a small black folder. Avery frowned. What is that? My quiet evidence, I said. Avery's face tightened. Mateo, not against them, I said gently. For you. I sat at the coffee table and opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Not taken secretly, just captured over years, saved like scars. Holiday group shots where Avery was centered and I was cropped at the edge. A gala photo where Evelyn's hand rested on Avery's shoulder while her gaze slid past me as if I were furniture. A screenshot from a charity website listing board members. Evelyn's name bold, her quote about access, her smile bright. Beneath it, a social media caption from the same week. Family dinner, Whitmore tradition. Just us. A photo of the table with Avery included and me missing. Avery's breath caught as she stared. I didn't know you saved these, she whispered. I didn't save them to punish you, I said. I saved them because I didn't want you to gaslight yourself. Avery looked up sharply. Gaslight myself? Yes, I said. Because every time you tried to name what was happening, they told you it was nothing. And you believed them because it was safer. Avery's lips parted, stunned. I slid one of the photos toward her. Look at this. It was our 3rd anniversary dinner at the Whitmore house. Evelyn had insisted on a family toast. Cal held his glass. Graham smiled. Evelyn's handwritten place cards sat in front of each plate. Avery's read Avery in looping script. Mine read Mateo, guest. Avery stared at it until her face went pale. She wrote guest. Avery whispered, horrified. Yes, I said. 3 years married. And she labeled me like I was temporary. Avery's fingers trembled as she touched the photo like it might burn her. I thought I imagined it, she whispered. I thought I was sensitive. I shook my head. No, you were trained to doubt your reality. Avery swallowed hard. And you just endured it. For you, I said simply, because I thought love meant patience. Avery's eyes filled. What does love mean now? I held her gaze. It means we stop lying, I said. Avery nodded slowly, a new kind of fear replacing the old one. Not fear of her mother, fear of freedom. At 5:27 p.m., my phone buzzed. Jonah, again, club vote confirmed. Also, Gilded is ready. Once vote hits, story goes live. Brace. I stared at the message, then looked at Avery. It's time, I said. Avery's voice was a whisper. For what? I exhaled slowly. For the world to stop pretending, I said. At 6:18 p.m., the Whitmore Country Club released a statement. Not public, not official press, just a member communication that leaked within minutes because people love watching power bleed. Avery saw it first. Her phone buzzed, and she read the message out loud, voice shaking. Due to recent conduct unbecoming of the club's standards of civility and inclusion, the membership privileges of Evelyn and Cal Whitmore are hereby revoked effective immediately. Avery's breath caught. Then she read the next line. Additional membership review has resulted in the revocation of Gregory Whitmore's auxiliary privileges, effective immediately. She looked up at me, eyes huge. They kicked them out, she whispered. I nodded once. Yes. Avery stared at the screen like she'd never seen language do violence before. Then her phone rang. Mother. Avery froze. My voice stayed calm. Answer. Avery's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. She put it on speaker. Evelyn's voice came through like a blade dragged across silk. Avery. Avery whispered. Mother. Do you know what you've done? Evelyn hissed. Avery swallowed. I don't, Evelyn snapped. Don't play innocent. This is your husband's doing, and you let it happen. Avery's voice trembled. You excluded him, and now we are humiliated. Evelyn said, each word clipped. Do you understand what it means to be removed from the club? Do you understand what people will say? Avery's jaw tightened. People will say you got consequences. Silence. Evelyn's voice went dangerously quiet. Excuse me. Avery's hands shook, but she didn't drop the phone. You printed family only. You told me he wasn't a factor. You tried to make me choose. So, I chose. Evelyn inhaled sharply. You chose him? Avery's eyes closed briefly. Yes. Evelyn's voice rose, just slightly, enough to show she'd lost control. Then you're not my daughter. Avery's throat bobbed. Tears slid down her face. And still she said, clearly, okay. The word hit the room like a door slamming. Evelyn made a sound, an angry, disbelieving exhale. You'll regret this. Avery's voice was steady now, soaked in grief but grounded. Maybe, but I'm done being afraid. Evelyn's voice turned venomous. Tell your husband this is not over. Avery looked at me, then back at the phone. It is for me. Evelyn's breath hissed. The line went dead. Avery sat down hard on the couch like her legs had stopped working. She stared at the wall, tears falling silently. I just lost my mother, she whispered. I sat beside her, not to fix it, just to be there. You just stopped being owned by her. Avery's lips trembled. That feels like death. Yes, I said softly, and also like birth. Avery turned her face toward me, eyes red and raw. What if I don't know who I am without them? I took her hand. Then we find out. Outside, the night deepened. And somewhere in that night, the Whitmores began to realize what true loss felt like. Not money. Not clubs. Control. The next morning, Avery woke up and stared at the ceiling as if it might give her script. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse. I can't go back. I sat on the edge of the bed. Back where? To being the bridge, she whispered. To being the apology. To being their instrument. I nodded. Then don't. Avery swallowed. But if I don't, I lose everything. You already did, I said gently. Last night. Avery flinched. Don't say it like that. I'm saying it like truth, I replied. Avery turned her head toward me. What do we do now? I exhaled slowly. We build something that doesn't require their permission. Avery's eyes searched mine. Ow! I didn't pretend it would be romantic. We start with paperwork, I said. Avery blinked. Paperwork? I nodded. You resign formally from any role tied to their firm. You remove your name from anything that makes them think they still own you. Avery's face tightened. They'll tell everyone I'm unstable. They already will, I said. So let them. If they need you to be crazy to make themselves right, that's their story. We don't have to live in it. Avery let out a shaky breath. Okay. We sat at the kitchen table. Avery opened her laptop. Her resignation letter took her an hour because she kept trying to be polite. I watched her type, delete, type again. Finally, I said gently, stop writing like you're begging. Avery's hands paused. I'm not begging. You are, I said softly. You're asking permission to leave. You don't need it. Avery stared at the screen, then slowly straightened her shoulders. She deleted half the letter. Then she wrote, effective immediately, I resign from all roles and responsibilities associated with Whitmore & Company. This decision is final. Please direct any further communications through counsel. She read it back, stunned. That sounds cold. It sounds clear, I corrected. Avery's eyes filled. They're going to hate me. They already do, I said gently. They just like you better when you were useful. Avery's finger hovered over send. She looked at me, fear and grief twisting together. If I hit send, there's no going back. I held her gaze. You can go back anytime. People return to cages all the time. But if you want a life with me that's equal, you can't keep leaving part of yourself behind in your mother's house. Avery's breath shuddered. Then she clicked. The email sent with a soft whoosh that sounded too small for what it meant. Avery stared at the screen like she'd just detonated something. Done, she whispered. I exhaled slowly. Done. Avery's phone buzzed immediately. A call from Cal. She didn't answer. It buzzed again. Evelyn. She didn't answer. Then a text from an unknown number. You're ruining this family. Come to your senses. Avery stared at it, face blank. She handed me the phone without speaking. I read it, then gave it back. Block. Avery hesitated. Then she blocked the number like she was cutting a cord. The moment after was quiet. Too quiet. Avery put her head in her hands. I feel empty. That's withdrawal, I said softly. You're detoxing from approval. Avery laughed weakly. Is that a thing? It is now, I said. Avery looked up, eyes glassy. And you? My chest tightened. What about me? Avery's voice trembled. Are you okay? I paused. Because this whole time, I'd been steady for her. I'd been calm. I'd been the one holding the line. But now that she'd actually stepped out of the cage, I felt something inside me loosen, years of swallowed humiliation unclenching. My voice went quiet. No, Avery's eyes widened. Mateo, I swallowed. I'm relieved. And I'm furious. And I'm scared. Avery blinked, tears spilling again. Scared of what? I looked at her. Of you waking up and realizing what it cost you, I admitted. And deciding I'm not worth it. Avery's face crumpled. She moved toward me and grabbed my hands like she couldn't stand the distance. You are worth it, she whispered fiercely. You are. I didn't know how to choose you without losing myself. I squeezed her hands. Now you're choosing both. Avery nodded, sobbing softly. Now I am. And outside, the Whitmore's world began its deeper collapse. Because when you remove the obedient daughter, the whole structure shakes. Evelyn Whitmore arrived at our door on Sunday morning. No driver, no entourage, just her standing on the porch in a gray coat, hands bare, face pale. Avery saw her through the window and went stiff like a hunted animal. She's here, Avery whispered. I set down my mug. Do you want to open the door? Avery swallowed. No, then don't, I said. Avery's eyes flicked to me. But if I don't, she'll do what? I asked gently. Kick the door in? Yell? Make a scene? Avery's breath caught. Yes. I walked to the window and looked out. Evelyn wasn't yelling. She wasn't pacing. She was standing still, posture straight, like she'd come to a funeral. I turned back to Avery. This isn't an attack. Avery's brow furrowed. How do you know? Because she didn't bring her armor, I said. Avery stared at the door like it was a cliff edge. Then slowly she nodded. Okay. Avery opened the door. Evelyn stepped inside and stopped in the foyer, eyes scanning our home as if she'd never truly seen it before. Avery's voice was tight. What do you want? Evelyn looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Her eyes were tired, not defeated, but worn. I'm not here to fight, Evelyn said quietly. Avery blinked, suspicious. Then why are you here? Evelyn lifted the object in her hands. A journal, old leather, worn edges, the kind of book that had been held by many hands and kept alive by secrecy. Avery stared. What is that? Evelyn's throat moved as she swallowed. It belonged to my mother-in-law. Avery's eyebrows knitted. Grandmother Whitmore? Evelyn nodded once. Yes. I didn't speak. I watched. This was not my moment to control. This was history surfacing. Evelyn held the journal out to Avery, hands trembling slightly. I found it last night, Evelyn said, in a box I haven't opened in years. I don't know why I looked. Maybe because everything is collapsing and I finally heard the sound. Avery's voice was small. What's in it? Evelyn's eyes glistened for the first time I'd ever seen. Instructions. Avery stared at her, confused. Evelyn's voice grew quieter. She wrote rules for being a Whitmore woman. Rules for how to keep the family pure. Who belongs? Who doesn't? How to punish disobedience without making it look like punishment. Avery's face went pale. I'm saying, Evelyn whispered, that I learned cruelty like a craft. Avery's hands shook as she reached for the journal. She didn't take it yet. Evelyn's gaze flicked to me, and something changed in her eyes. Shame. Real shame. Not embarrassment. I told myself I was protecting tradition, Evelyn said. But the truth is, I was repeating what was done to me. Avery's mouth trembled. So you hurt him because you were hurt. Evelyn flinched. Yes. Silence filled the foyer. Avery finally took the journal, held it like it was heavy. Evelyn's voice cracked, just slightly. I wanted you to choose me, she said to Avery. Because when you choose me, it proves my pain was worth it. It proves my obedience wasn't for nothing. Avery's eyes filled. Mother, Evelyn shook her head. Don't, she whispered. Don't comfort me. I don't deserve it. She inhaled, shaky. Mateo. I met her gaze calmly. Evelyn's voice was barely above a whisper. You don't have to forgive me. I didn't answer with absolution. I answered with truth. I don't, I said. Evelyn nodded once, accepting the boundary like a verdict. Then she looked back at Avery, eyes wet. I came to tell you something I wish someone had told me. Evelyn whispered. Choose yourself. Because no one in this family will ever choose you unless you're useful. Avery's lips parted, tears spilling. Evelyn turned toward the door. Avery's voice broke. Is that all? Evelyn paused at the threshold, back still straight, even in humility. She didn't turn around. Yes, Evelyn said softly. That's all. Then she left. Avery stood frozen, journal in her hands, tears falling silently. I stepped closer, careful. Avery, I murmured. She looked up at me, eyes raw. She admitted it. I nodded. Yes. Avery swallowed. Now what? I looked at the journal, the weight of generations pressed into leather and ink. Now, I said softly, you decide what kind of family you want to be. Avery's fingers tightened around the journal. And for the first time, her fear wasn't about losing the Whitmores. It was about what she might finally become without them. The journal didn't open like a book. It opened like a wound. Avery sat at the kitchen table with the leather cover in both hands, thumbs resting on the cracked spine. She stared at it for a full minute before lifting it, like she was afraid the words inside would crawl out. I didn't push. I rinsed 2 mugs, put the kettle on, and stayed near enough to be present without taking over. When you've lived with someone controlled for years, you learn the difference between support and rescue. Avery finally opened the journal. The pages smelled faintly of perfume that had gone stale, rose and dust. The handwriting was neat and slanted, disciplined in the way women's handwriting becomes when they're trained to make even their thoughts look pretty. Avery's lips moved as she read silently. Then she stopped, her eyes fixed on a line, and didn't move. "What is it?" I asked softly. Avery swallowed. "It's a list." "A list of what?" She turned the journal toward me, finger hovering above the page like she was afraid to touch it. There were headings. Who belongs? Who is tolerated? Who must never be brought in? Under who belongs, there were names. Old family names. Lines that connected them like branches in a tree. Under who is tolerated, there were notes. Traits. Conditions. Harmless if kept grateful. Allow proximity, but not influence. Do not permit holidays alone. Always remind them they were chosen. Under who must never be brought in. There was one line that made Avery's face turn gray. Anyone who thinks love is enough. Avery's breath hitched. Oh my God, I didn't say I told you. I didn't say this is what she did to me. Because this was the moment Avery finally saw that it wasn't personal failure. It was an inherited system. Avery turned the page with trembling fingers. There were entries dated decades ago, written like a diary, but structured like strategy. If the daughter becomes attached to an outsider, make him feel like a visitor. Visitors leave. If she insists, punish with absence. Withdrawing warmth teaches obedience. Never shout. Shouting is ugly. Control is quiet. Avery's eyes blurred. She wiped at her cheek, furious at herself for crying again. This is her, she whispered. It's where she learned it. I corrected gently. Avery shook her head. No, she didn't just learn it. She perfected it. I sat across from her. Yes. Avery's voice cracked. So when she printed family only, it wasn't impulse, I said. It was doctrine. Avery's shoulders shook. I married you and brought you into a doctrine. My chest tightened. Avery, no. She interrupted, voice sharp with grief. No, let me say it. I brought you into a house that was built to make you smaller. And I stood there while it happened because I thought that's what love was. She covered her mouth with her hand like the truth tasted bitter. I leaned forward. What do you think love is now? Avery looked up, eyes raw. Something that doesn't require me to betray you. I nodded once. Good. Avery stared down at the journal again. She came here and she told me to choose myself. Yes, I said. Avery's laugh was ugly, disbelieving. Isn't that insane? Like she's handing me the knife she used and saying, here, don't cut yourself the way I did. She's not asking for forgiveness, I said carefully. She's asking you to stop feeding the machine. Avery's fingers tightened around the page edges. But what does that even look like? She'll still exist. My father will still call. Graham will still. Avery's phone buzzed like it heard its name. Graham flashed on the screen. Avery froze. I didn't tell her what to do. I watched her decide. She stared at the screen for 3 full rings, then answered and put it on speaker, hands shaking. Avery. Graham's voice came through. Careful, practiced, irritated under the calm. What the hell is going on? Avery swallowed. Hi, Graham. Don't hi me, he snapped, then caught himself. Sorry, but this is a disaster. Avery's mouth tightened. For who? For us, he said, as if it were obvious. For the family. Mother got removed from the Access Initiative Gala. Dad's losing business. People are texting me like I'm radioactive. Avery's eyes flashed. You should try being excluded from your own marriage. There was a pause. Graham's voice dropped into something flatter. Okay, look, I'm not calling to argue feelings. Avery's jaw clenched. Of course you're not. I'm calling because we need a solution, Graham continued. Naya's parents are asking questions. Mother's furious. Dad's in crisis meetings. And now the club. Avery, do you understand what it means to lose the club? Avery's laugh was small and sharp. Apparently, it means you finally feel consequences. Graham exhaled. Avery, listen. Mateo needs to make calls. Retract whatever story he spun. Jonah Park is sniffing around. Someone said Gilded is preparing something. We need to stop this before it becomes public. Avery looked at me, then back at the phone. No, she said. Graham went still. No, no. Avery repeated clearer. Mateo isn't retracting the truth because it makes you uncomfortable. Graham's voice sharpened. Avery, this isn't about truth. This is about reputation. Avery's eyes glistened. Exactly. Graham's tone turned colder. If you don't fix this, you're going to be cut off. Avery's mouth trembled. You mean punished? Graham didn't deny it. Call what you want. Avery's voice went quiet, dangerously quiet. Graham, why did you let her exclude him? Silence. Graham finally muttered, it was easier. Avery shut her eyes. Because that was the whole family motto, whispered behind fancy curtains. It was easier. Avery opened her eyes and said, then let it be harder now. Graham's voice rose. Avery, she cut him off. I'm done. You can either treat Mateo like family, or you can lose me. That's it. Graham's breathing was audible through the speaker. You're choosing him. Avery glanced at me, then back at the phone. I'm choosing me. A beat. Graham's voice went tight. Fine. The call ended. Avery stared at the phone like it had just confirmed her worst fear. You did it, I said softly. Avery swallowed. I feel like I'm floating. That's what happens when you step out of the gravity you were raised in, I replied. Avery's gaze slid to the journal again. What do we do with this? I looked at the leather book in her hands. Generations of instruction, cruelty preserved like a relic. We don't let it become our scripture, I said. Avery nodded slowly. Then, with shaking hands, she closed the journal and slid it into the drawer beneath the silverware. Not hidden like shame, stored like evidence. And in that small movement, something shifted. Avery wasn't begging for a family to accept her anymore. She was documenting them. Rebuilding isn't romantic. It's not a montage with soft music and a fresh coat of paint. It's waking up at 3 a.m. because your body still expects punishment. It's answering the door with your heart racing because you think it's your mother coming back with sharper words. It's realizing you don't know how to spend a Sunday because you've always spent Sundays performing. Avery spent the first week after her resignation walking around our house like she didn't trust it. She flinched when a mailbox lid clanged. She checked her phone compulsively, even after we'd blocked half her contacts. She apologized for things that weren't apologies. For the weather, for silence, for breathing too loudly. One night, while we were folding laundry, she held up a sweater and whispered, I don't know how to be normal. I put down the towel I'd been folding. Normal is overrated. Avery's laugh was shaky. Not like that. I mean, without them, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to live, I said. Avery stared at me. Ow. So we built rules. Not for control, for safety. Rule 1. No Whitmore visits without consent from both of us. Rule 2. Any communication from them goes to one shared email folder, not to Avery's nervous system at midnight. Rule 3. If Avery starts spiraling, we name what's happening out loud. Not I'm crazy. Not I'm dramatic. We named it correctly. I'm afraid of being punished. I'm craving approval. I feel guilty because guilt is how they tether me. It was clumsy at first. One morning, Avery woke up and burst into tears because the grocery store cashier smiled at her. It felt like I was allowed to exist, she sobbed, embarrassed. I held her, forehead against her hair, and whispered, You've always been allowed. She shook her head violently. No, I was allowed when I was useful. I pulled back just enough to look at her. Then let's make a promise. Avery's eyes were swollen. What? We don't use each other, I said. Ever. Avery's breath hitched. We partner, I continued. Equal weight, equal voice, equal dignity. Avery nodded slowly, like she was learning a new language. Then she asked, quiet as a confession, Are you still mad at me? The question landed heavy, because underneath it was the real question. Will you punish me the way they did? I exhaled slowly. Sometimes. Avery flinched. I reached for her hand. But being mad isn't the same as leaving. And it isn't the same as contempt. Avery's lips trembled. You're allowed to be mad. Yes, I said. And you're allowed to feel it without collapsing. Avery let out a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for 6 years. Okay, she whispered. Then another part of rebuilding began. The Whitmore's world started to burn in public. Because Thursday's club leak didn't stay private. It bled. On Friday morning, Jonah's article went live. Not a headline screaming their names. A feature, polished, devastating. A story about legacy families and inclusion branding, about the quiet cruelty behind public philanthropy. A paragraph that didn't name Evelyn directly, but described a prominent donor family recently facing institutional distancing after an explicitly exclusionary private event invitation surfaced. The people who needed to know knew. At noon, Farah texted me. Development office received 2 donor calls asking if we condone Whitmore behavior. We do not. At 2 p.m., Rohan's office sent a curt update. Membership revocations final. No appeal. At 4 p.m., Avery's father emailed her through a lawyer. A request for reconciliation that read like a contract. Avery stared at the email for a long time, then closed her laptop. No, she said. Just that. No. And I realized rebuilding wasn't just Avery learning to stand up to her family. It was her learning to stand up to the version of herself that still wanted their permission. 2 weeks after Avery resigned, the panic shifted. The adrenaline crash came. One morning, Avery sat at the kitchen table in sweatpants, hair messy, eyes tired, and said, "I think I ruined my life." I didn't argue. I didn't toss motivational phrases at her like glitter. I sat across from her and asked, "What exactly do you think you ruined?" Avery blinked slowly. "Everything I worked for. My career. My identity. My future." "You mean the future they designed?" I said gently. Avery's jaw tightened. "It was still mine. It was theirs with your name on it." I corrected. Avery's eyes filled. "Then what do I have?" I leaned forward. "You have skills. You have intelligence. You have empathy, something they treated like weakness. And you have the ability to build a life that doesn't come with threats." Avery sniffed, wiping her cheek with the heel of her hand. "That sounds nice. It also sounds like a fantasy." "It's not," I said. "It's work." Avery laughed bitterly. "Work I'm not qualified for." I reached for my phone. "You are." Avery frowned. "What are you doing?" "I'm calling someone," I said. Avery's eyes widened. "Mateo, no. Please don't rescue you." I finished softly. Avery's throat bobbed. "Yes." I nodded. "I'm not rescuing you. I'm opening a door. You choose whether to walk through." Avery stared at me, suspicion and hope tangled. I tapped the name in my contacts. Lena Marquez, Foundation Director. Lena answered on the second ring. "Mateo, if you're calling, it means either you found a miracle under varnish or you're in trouble." "A bit of both," I said, smiling faintly. I glanced at Avery. "Do you have 5 minutes?" "For you, yes," Lena said. "Talk to me." I kept my voice professional. "I have someone I want you to meet. Avery Rivera. She has experience in operations and donor relations from a complicated legacy environment. She's looking for a role in a place that actually means its values." Avery's eyes widened, furious and terrified at being spoken about like this. Lena didn't hesitate. "Send her resume. And send her as a person, Mateo, not a Whitmore accessory." I felt a quiet satisfaction. "Thank you. I'm not doing it for you," Lena said briskly. "I'm doing it because I'm tired of watching talented people get eaten by rich families." She paused, then added, "Also, I read Jonah's piece. Tell your wife she's brave." The call ended. Avery stared at me like I'd just rearranged the floor beneath her. Why would you do that?" she asked, voice shaking. I met her gaze calmly. "Because you deserve a life that doesn't require you to beg your mother for oxygen." Avery's mouth trembled. "But what if I fail?" I leaned in. "Then you fail in a world where failing doesn't mean being disowned. That's a better kind of failure." Avery swallowed hard. "What if they find out?" "They will," I said. "And they'll hate that you're thriving without them. That's how you'll know you're free." Avery stared at the table for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Okay." She stood up, shoulders still shaky, and said, "Okay, I'll send my resume." And that was the moment I saw something new in her posture. Not confidence, not yet, but agency, the beginning of it. The invitation came a month later. Not on embossed paper, not by courier, by email. From Cal. Subject line, dinner request. The body was brief, painfully formal. Avery, your mother and I would like to invite you and Mateo to dinner. We understand the last month has been difficult. We would like to move forward respectfully. Dad. Avery stared at the screen until her eyes went glassy. They're trying to act normal, she whispered. They're trying to regain access, I replied. Avery swallowed. Should we go? I didn't answer with certainty. I answered with the only thing that mattered. What do you want? I asked. Avery's mouth tightened. I want closure. And boundaries? I asked. Avery nodded. Yes. Then we go, I said. With boundaries. Avery's hands twisted together. What if Evelyn insults me? I said gently. We leave. Avery blinked. Just like that. Yes, I said. No speeches. No pleading. No fighting. We leave. Avery stared at me like the simplicity was shocking. That's allowed, I added. Avery's breath shuddered. Okay. So we went. The Whitmore house looked exactly the same. Stone and glass and manicured trees that screamed money without making a sound. Evelyn opened the door herself. She wore cream, pearls, control. But her eyes were different now. They didn't slide past me. They landed on me like she had finally learned it could not be erased. Mateo, she said. No warmth. No venom. Just a name. Evelyn, I replied. Avery hovered at my side, tense. Cal appeared behind Evelyn, expression careful. Come in. The dining room table was set for 4. No extra place settings. No servants hovering. No audience. That alone told me this wasn't theater. It was negotiation. We sat. Evelyn poured water herself, hands steady. Avery watched her mother's hands like she expected them to slap. For the first 10 minutes, we talked about nothing. The weather. The museum's upcoming exhibit. A charity gala Evelyn would not attend. Cal's new consulting role, spoken of vaguely. Then Evelyn set her fork down and looked at Avery. Avery, she said, I want to be clear. I will not apologize for wanting tradition. Avery's spine stiffened. Evelyn continued, voice tight, but I will acknowledge that I misjudged how publicly it would land. There it was. Not I hurt you. I misjudged the optics. Avery's jaw tightened. Mother, I touched Avery's knee under the table, a silent reminder. We don't beg for what they can't give. Avery inhaled slowly, then said, We didn't come for optics. We came for respect. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Then, surprisingly, she didn't snap. She stared at Avery for a long moment. Then she said quietly, I don't know how. Avery blinked. Cal's fork paused midair. Evelyn's voice sounded unfamiliar, like it belonged to a woman who had never admitted weakness before. I know how to maintain a name, Evelyn said. I know how to keep people out. I do not know how to let people in. Avery's eyes filled with tears. Evelyn's gaze slid to me. And you, Evelyn said, voice stiff, you are competent. I almost laughed. Evelyn complimented the way a queen grants a peasant land, with reluctance. But it mattered anyway. Not because it was enough, because it was the first crack in her certainty. Thank you, I said neutral. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Your methods were extreme. My methods were truthful. I corrected softly. If the truth ruins a reputation, the reputation was built on a lie. Cal flinched at the sentence like it was a slap. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You cost us. I held her gaze. You cost yourselves. Silence stretched. Then Avery spoke, voice trembling but firm. We can have a relationship, she said, but it will not be the old one. Evelyn's mouth tightened. Meaning, Avery sat straighter. No more family only. No more threats. No more asking me to sacrifice my marriage to soothe your ego. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Avery continued, softer but unwavering. And if you can't do that, we won't come. Cal swallowed. Avery looked at her father. I'm not negotiating. Evelyn stared at her daughter, really stared, like she was seeing a stranger. Then, very quietly, Evelyn nodded once. Not agreement, not love, but acknowledgement. The dinner continued. Stiff, polite, controlled, but there were no knives. When we left, Avery exhaled in the car like she'd been holding her breath the whole night. I didn't collapse, she whispered. I glanced at her. No, Avery's eyes glistened. I didn't beg. I reached over and took her hand. No, Avery swallowed. I think. I'm becoming someone else. I squeezed her fingers. Someone you were always supposed to be. The first holiday, without the Whitmores, felt like stepping into silence. No itinerary. No dress code. No performance. Avery woke up on Thanksgiving morning and stared at the calendar like it was wrong. What do we do? She asked, voice small. I smiled faintly. We eat. Avery blinked. Just eat. Yes, I said. And we invite people we actually like. So we did. Farah came, because she hated lonely holidays and refused to admit it. Lena came, because she'd become the kind of friend who tells you the truth and brings wine. 2 museum assistants came too, young women who'd stayed in the city for the holiday, grateful for a table that didn't ask them to perform. We cooked together. Avery laughed in the kitchen, shoulders loosening as she stirred gravy without anyone correcting her technique. At one point, Avery paused, spoon in hand, and whispered, "No one's watching." I leaned in and kissed her cheek. Exactly. After dinner, we sat on the couch with plates balanced on our knees, and Avery looked around the room, at the mismatched chairs, the half-burned candle, the people talking over one another without fear. Avery's eyes filled again. I nudged her gently. What is it? Avery's voice trembled. This feels like life. It was. And then, in the weeks that followed, the other pieces fell into place. Lena called Avery with a job offer at a foundation that funded arts access programs, the kind of work Evelyn had used as branding but never practiced as belief. Avery hung up the phone and stared at me in shock. I got it, she whispered. I smiled. You earned it. Avery shook her head, laughing and crying at once. No, I mean without them. Without Mother calling in favors. Without being owned, I finished. Avery collapsed into my arms, sobbing with relief. And in that moment, something in our marriage settled into a new shape. Not the old shape, where I endured and she apologized. A new one, where we chose each other with open eyes. A year later, I stood in the museum's restoration lab and watched Avery through the glass wall outside the gallery. She was dressed simply, no Whitmore polish, no costume. She spoke with Lena and Farah near a new exhibit that focused on community artists, their stories centered and celebrated. Avery laughed, head tilted back. The sound still surprised me sometimes, because for years her laughter had been measured, careful, appropriate. Now it was real. Farah walked into the lab behind me, hands in her pockets. She looked through the glass too. She looks different, Farah said. She is, I replied. Farah's mouth curved slightly. And you? I glanced down at my hands, steady, stained faintly with solvent. The hands Evelyn once called working hands like it was an insult. I'm lighter, I admitted. Farah nodded. Good. You didn't destroy them, Mateo. I looked at Avery again. No, Farah's voice was quiet. You just stopped protecting their rot. That night, Avery and I had dinner at home. No silver, no audience, no crest pressed in a paper. After we ate, Avery opened the kitchen drawer and pulled out the journal. She set it on the table. I haven't looked at this in months, she said. Do you want to? I asked. Avery traced the leather cover with her fingertips, then shook her head. No, she said. I keep it so I remember what we escaped. I nodded. Avery met my gaze. And so I don't become it. I reached across the table and took her hand. We won't, I said. Avery squeezed my fingers. Promise? I looked at her. Really looked at the woman who had learned to say no, who had lost her inherited world and found her own. I promise, I said. Outside, the city moved on. And somewhere across town, the Whitmores still existed. Older, quieter, less certain. Evelyn still didn't hug like a normal mother. Cal still spoke in careful phrases. Graham still tried to pretend it was all misunderstood. But none of them could undo what had happened. Because once you see a pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. And once you choose yourself, you can't truly go back to being owned. Avery leaned across the table and kissed me. Slow, certain, like a vow renewed. Then she whispered, almost amused, You know what's funny? What? I asked. Avery's eyes glittered, not with malice, but with freedom. They thought excluding you would make you disappear. I smiled faintly, and Avery's voice turned warm. Instead, it made me wake up. I squeeze her hand, clean hands, new tradition, and a life that didn't require anyone else's permission to be called family. If you've ever been treated like an outsider in your own relationship, like you had to earn your seat at the table, hear me. Love isn't supposed to cost you your dignity. Breaking a generational cycle doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like one boundary, held calmly, until the whole system has to adjust. If this story hit home, tap like so more people who need it can find it, and subscribe for more relationship drama and hard-won justice stories. And I want to hear from you. What would you have done the moment you saw family only? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want another story where the quiet one finally chooses themselves, watch the next video in this playlist.